At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES Podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, folks. This is Super NES Podcast, episode number 287. I am Greg, as always, joined by my very good friend, co-host, Joe.
Hello.
And we're covering a game that we were actually debating a little bit before the podcast of. It's been so long on the list that, we're not, for some episodes, we're not sure who picked what episode anymore at this point, but I do know this one was mine because there's some very good reasons why I picked this one. We're looking at a very interesting game which did not get officially released in English, but does have a translation ROM available online. So you can play if you want to. That's how I played it. I'm assuming that's how Joe played it, unless he suddenly learned Japanese in the last month or so. We are covering a game that translates to Torneko's Great Adventure Mystery Dungeon. So for 1993, for the Super Famicom. I will attempt the Japanese title here. Torneko no Daiboken Fushigi no Dungeon. For the Japanese name of it. So this game features, as the English title implies, this game revolves around, the adventures of a guy named Torneko who sounds like he's exploring a dungeon of some sort. Torneko may not mean anything to you unless you're a big fan of the Dragon Quest franchise, because this game is actually a spin-off in some ways of Dragon Quest 4. It's actually Dragon Warrior 4, but I'm going to call it Dragon Quest just to keep with the common international title that the franchise are going by. But when the game was released in the West as Dragon Warrior 4 for the NES way back when, his name was translated as Taloon. So that's how most of you who played the game back in the day as a kid, like I did, know him. So Dragon Quest 4 is still my favorite game in the franchise. Like I really enjoy, I really like a lot of Dragon Quest games. Dragon Quest was my very first JRPG, so that one has very nostalgic memories for me. And Dragon Quest 11 is an amazing game, and I cannot wait for 12 to come out. But 4 is still my favorite game in the franchise. And the reason for me why 4 was my favorites was that the gameplay was very unique. You actually started off playing as different characters in chapters. So you have the game self-contained chapters where you control this person in this chapter, this person in this chapter, and so on and so on. And then eventually, finally chapter 5, you meet the hero. And the hero during his quest will find and recruit the other members of the party who you already played and built and grown to hopefully like in the course of the game. Like for the grand adventure to save the world. It's a very big game because of that. Definitely the biggest of the NES Dragon Quest games. But anyway, Taloon was one of the people who had a chapter focused on him in that game, and actually, not having known much about this game before I started playing it, the plot for this game is actually pretty similar to Dragon Quest 4 in many ways. I could not find exactly. They never actually stated officially how many years have passed between Dragon Quest 4, between the events of Dragon Quest 4 and this game, but the plot kind of makes you think that the plot kind of makes you think that maybe it's kind of like a sequel to the events of Dragon Quest 4, where it's like he's gotten a taste of adventure being a hero and whatnot, but he still has he still has his dream, as he does Dragon Quest 4, of somebody opening up his own shop. But to do that, of course, you need money. Where's the classic trope? What's the easy way to find money in a fantasy setting? Go into a dungeon. So, not a very the story is original in some ways. We'll get into it here in a little bit, but anyway, so that's a real kind of convoluted way of explaining the background of this game, how it came to be and whatnot. But anyway, so it was always a game. It was always a game that I wanted to check out. But and I know I enjoy JRPGs a bit more than Joe did. I know Joe also enjoys the Dragon Quest games, but I really don't know. I don't know what your own affection with Dragon Quest 4 is, or 4 is, like your own experiences like the game, Joe, or if you would have picked this game yourself eventually, if I didn't say I wanted to cover for the podcast.
Okay, so I came to Dragon Quest late. I mean, I played Dragon Warrior for the NES, but
sure, of course,
because everyone and their mother had that because Nintendo Power gave it away.
They made too many copies,
right? But I never knew. I never knew what I was doing. It was one of those just walk around. Oh, battle. I'm dead. Like, that was my experience with RPGs. Same thing with Final Fantasy. I think I've talked about that before. It was just loading up whatever save was on a friend's cart, walking for a little bit, encountering an enemy, and then not knowing what to do, and usually ended up dying. Right. I did not start discovering RPGs until Final Fantasy VII. And it is sad for me to say that, but it is true.
A lot of folks started out with that game too, so don't feel bad. I mean,
I mean, it was a perfect entry point. Like, the PlayStation was huge, right? I mean, there's a reason Squaresoft keeps like pumping out sequels and spin-offs and spin-offs and whatnot, like the game, because everybody's played it. So I mean, nostalgia for that thing is huge, so I get it. So a lot of folks came to the series. A lot of folks came in both, not only to the franchise, but also to JRPGs themselves because of that way. So It was that introduced me. Lunar is the game that cemented my love for JRPGs,
which you talked about before,
which I've talked about in extensive on numerous podcasts.
So,
but that being said, like Dragon Quest. I was not introduced to Dragon Quest until the PS2 with Dragon Quest 8. What is even crazier is by the time I discovered it, the PS3 and 360 were out. So I discovered it way late.
That happens a lot too. So
well, so I mean, obviously now I'm in my mid 40s and I can pretty much acquire whatever I need to. At the time in my 20s, I was a young father and struggling. So I chose an Xbox and I dedicated myself to that Xbox and nothing else. So I missed out on quite a bit. So
as a side note, Dragon Quest 8 was actually the first game in the series I really didn't like that much because to me the game felt very dated and plain. So I do want to check out the remake, however, which recently came out because I heard it's a much better experience. So I definitely will play this at some point.
I was gonna say, I know that they did like, I don't know if it's a remake or a remaster for like the 3DS, I think.
That's right. I forget about that version.
So that one I've heard is pretty good. But I mean, for me, the PS2 version still holds up. That DuckTales into I originally tried to play the Japanese only 9, right? 9 was the one for the DS.
I know. Sorry, thinking about 10. 9 did come out.
10. There we go.
9 was 9 did come out here in the West. That was the DS only entry. Unfortunately, still only locked away in the DS. They really need to re-release that game in some format. 10 was the Japan only MMORPG entry in the franchise.
Okay. So then it was 9 I was thinking of. I was thinking of the wrong one that was Japanese only.
9 was very good. I love 9. 9 was a fun game. 9 was very hard, but that was a very fun game.
9 was pretty good, and at that time, like, portable gaming was everything for me. So it definitely clicked. And then I mirror what you said. I haven't even beaten Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest 11 yet, but I am pretty deep in that game to where I have, I think, all the characters I'm going to encounter. I could be wrong though. and I'm not going to spoil anything here, but yeah, Dragon Quest is near and dear to my heart. Part of it is because of the inspiration and creation by Akira Toriyama, which, of course, I mean, I am a huge Dragon Ball fan. I've been a fan of everything he's done. So Dragon Quest is no different. And it's one of those things where, like, I discovered Dragon Ball before I discovered Dragon Quest, which is great. But also, since we're talking about Akira anyways, Blue Dragon, that is an underrated classic for the 360. Just saying, like, play that game. That game needs to come off the 360.
Yeah, I've heard that game, but I've never played it myself. So,
but yeah, so that's been my Dragon Quest journey, which technically I'm still on. I just recently got the 3 2D remake and 1 and 2 2D remake. Both were on sale on the PlayStation 5.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah, at this point, I'm, a lot of people are up in arms about no more physical media through Sony. I get it, but also, like, I got both of those together on sale for $60.
Yeah.
Like, you're only going to get that in a digital format, not on a physical. So, right. There's an argument there. And yes, I am part of the problem, whatever. So yeah, I'm done. I'm done with modern gaming for the most part. Now it's like, I got these remakes. That's all I got. I got enough games now to last me the rest of my life. That's the
Dragon
sad
Quest
thing.
4 does not have a modern remake yet. I say yet because it's very possible that they might announce one next month. But if you want to play it, the last remake of the game was on the DS about 20 years ago. It's a very good version of the game. That version of the game is also available. At least it was last time I checked, because I still have it on mobile phones.
Oh, okay.
So if you're okay with playing it that way. That's also an option for you as well too. But actually, all the Dragon Quest games are available. Up to 8, that is, at least, are available on mobile on mobile phones. Like I said, Dragon Quest 9 needs to come out. Needs to come out the 3DS because it's a great game locked away there. But anyway, Dragon Quest 4, like I said, is a favorite of mine. So I really do encourage you to play at some point because it's a really unique, story-rich, like, fun game, and very deep also for an NES, style JRPG. So, but anyway, yeah. So, Dragon Quest IV came out in Japan way back in 1990, but we didn't actually get it here in the West until like 1992. So that may explain why I say that this spin-off game, Torneko's Great Adventure, came out in 1993. That's why, because the game already had been out in Japan for a few years by that point. But anyway, for some reason, Torneko really was very popular with Japanese game players. I'm not sure I understand exactly the reason. There are all the reasons for it. He might fit the stereotype about the lovable, fat, harmless, like goofy, comical type relief. I think release character who seems popular over there, but and I'm not the only Westerner who's also been confused as to why the fascination with this guy either. But but anyway, yeah. So I mean, like, if you're gonna make a spin-off of somebody from this game, he was probably the best option to do it with, because it's like all the characters in the game, like I said, are good. I think that's why it's one of the reasons I really love the game so much, because for an NES RPG, it's a very deep game as far as like characterization goes. But so he was probably a good pick for that. So I actually did not know this until fairly recently, but Enix, the publisher of the Dragon Quest series, and of course now it's Square Enix because of the merger, did not actually develop the first 5 games of the franchise. They published it, but the actual developer of those games was a company called Chunsoft, who's now who merged a while back and is now known as Spike Chunsoft, which is a pretty big publisher even nowadays. Beyond the Mystery Dungeon franchise, because spoiler, just to become a franchise, they're best known for the sound novel series, like and Zero Escape series, and they did develop Danganronpa before the merger. As part of the merger, they lost the rights to that franchise. But anyway, yeah. So they're still a big company, still publishing games today. So anyway, they actually the ones who developed the first 5 Dragon Quest games. So quick side note. We haven't covered Dragon Quest game on this podcast for a long time. George and I did cover the remakes of Dragon Quest 1 and 2 when they got ported to the Super NES, I know the modern version of the games are very good, but the Super NES version of the games also have their charm to them as well too, because they really keep the look and feel of the original game very closely. The only thing, the major difference they did was that they doubled the experience and gold you earn, so grinding becomes almost moot at that point. So it's like, I played for that podcast. I played the Super NES version of Dragon Quest in like 3 hours. So it's so the modern version of the game is very good, but I'm saying there's also charming value. There's also charming redeeming value to the older version as well too. Anyway,
so when I first got my Switch, they had Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3, which I guess were ports of the mobile version that they released, which essentially were the Super Nintendo versions, like on the under mechanics. So those were the ones, at least 1 and 2, that I beat. I never. Okay, yeah. I started 3, but never got very far with it. And then when I found out it was a prequel, I was like, ah. And then, here we are. The remake came out, so now I'm starting all over again.
Yeah. I don't know for sure, but if they did go Super NES to mobile to Switch, then you did play that version of the game. But anyway, yeah. So we have not covered yet Dragon Quest 4, Dragon Quest 5 and 6, which were the Japanese only, the Japanese only Dragon Quest entries to the Super NES. So we will cover them eventually. Eventually at some point. I'm pretty sure I can talk Joe into covering those.
Yeah, they are on our list for possible 2027. So it's there. It's in the forefront of our minds.
But anyway, Dragon Quest as I'm sure most people know, is a franchise that's massive, and we can only scratch the surface of it as far as that goes. But anyway, so Chunsoft stopped developing Dragon Quest after the Dragon Quest games after 5, but they still had the rights to do something with the characters and stuff because, like I said, they made the games. So, at the time, one of the key people at Chunsoft was a big fan of the classic, big fan of the classic PC game Rogue, which was the very first roguelike game from way back in 1980. So I'm sure Joe's probably played some version of Rogue over the years. But, so he really liked the format of that game. So after some meetings, some discussions, whatever, they decided to finally take the character of Torneko and develop a roguelike, also Dragon Quest-ish spin-off game featuring him, and so the rest is history. So anyway, in this game, as I said before a moment ago, is basically a roguelike style game. It looks like a Dragon Quest game in many ways. The graphics, the font, the sound effects, they all kind of have that Dragon Quest look and feel to it. But the game plays more like a roguelike in the sense the dungeons are randomized, and so some of the treasures and stuff you can find. There is a main story, which I'll talk about here in a moment. Some of the game's appeal definitely is that that roguelike adventure of like, okay, how far do I push my luck? What can I find if I go down a bit further? Maybe what can I find on this run? Whatever. So like I said, really tried to, and this was one of the first console roguelike games. There were ports of PC roguelike games available for consoles in Japan at the time. This is one of the first developed from the ground up for the console. So anyway, as mentioned previously, the game was a big success. It did start a franchise which is called the Mystery Dungeon franchise. We have 2 sequels, Mystery Dungeon 2 and Mystery Dungeon 3. Mystery Dungeon 2 actually did come out here in the West, curiously enough. It came out to PlayStation as Torneko: The Last Hope. So, and then like the third game, however, was a PS2 game, and that did not get a Western release. So, like I said, the last game was PS2. Franchise is probably dead, but then, of course, companies do love to dust off old franchises every once in a while to bring them back to life. So I never want to say never as far as a franchise being dead. But the plot for this game is somewhat similar to what Torneko goes through in Dragon Quest IV. Because both games, he's a weapon merchant. He lives here. He lives in a small town with a wife and a son. He wants to make. He's a dream about making he has a dream about opening his own shop and making the greatest one on the planet. That's all the same. So, in this game, however, as opposed to being recruited for a journey by somebody else, he sets off the journey himself. And then so where the games diverge is that he hears a rumor about a mysterious dungeon that has an amazing treasure. So he decides to go down in that shop to try to find it. So and eventually when you get down low enough, I think you said, Joe, was the 28th floor, which sounds right.
Something like that.
You can find the Box of Happiness, which is pretty much the key item for the game. So, but however, you can't keep playing the game you want to a New Game Plus version because once you find that, it unlocks a more mysterious dungeon that you can explore. So, definitely a lot of replay value with this game. Joe helped me to look at a playlist on YouTube. There's not a lot of playlists for this game available on YouTube, which was not a shock to me because, like I said, it wasn't released officially in English. It's kind of a niche game, but we did find one playthrough where the playtime for the game for the first quest, the Mystery Dungeon, the main story, was 10 hours and 40 minutes. So. Not an overly huge game. I'd say about that's probably like average length for an NES RPG for sure. Maybe that 8 to 15 hour time range was pretty average for NES RPG. So I mean, this was Super NES, but still it's like it's like given the role given the roguelike nature of it, and the fact it's not like super deep with like story characters or whatever, I think this gameplay length is probably like pretty good for a game of this type. So so as mentioned before, the game obviously did sell very well in Japan because featured character was popular. It's been off the 2 sequels and whatever. It also had, I forgot to I forgot to ask you to take a look at this, Joe. Maybe you could do it after the podcast. I do recommend it. A really good high budget television commercial like this game like Japan. So it uses it's almost how the commercial was done almost entirely with clay animation footage.
That's pretty cool.
So you can find it on YouTube like pretty easily. It's pretty fun to check out. So the game was popular enough. That there was plans to release the game here in the West. It was even given the working title "Mystery Dungeon: Talon's Great Adventure." However, it's around this time period, '94, that Enix was closing. Enix was winding up its U.S. operations. So that killed the hope for any kind of Western North American release. However, recently a discovery was made in Europe. Where apparently a power prototype was found from Germany, just something showed up. It's one of those things that happens every now and then. All of a sudden, this unknown game showed up on eBay, and the guy's claiming hey, I used to work for Nintendo of Europe there in Germany. I somehow I got this. Somehow I kept this prototype when I left. Whether or not he actually brought it out by accident in his stuff, or he actually kind of did a 5-finger discount on it. Who knows? The point is, it survived. Given how Nintendo, given how short Nintendo was about prototypes, I don't care exactly how at this point, like how it survived because that prototype turning up on eBay triggered somebody else, a game counselor from the U.S. to pipe up also saying that he played the same prototype in the past. And making the claim that he was one of the first Americans to reach the bottom of the dungeon. So, assuming he's not lying about anything, that does show that it was at least planned for some kind of release for release from America before Enix shut down their Western of American operations. The eBay prototype 2022 didn't sell. It was sold privately to somebody 2 years later. So, as far as I know, that version's never been dumped, unfortunately. So, it's a very controversial topic about should prototypes be preserved and dumped?
Yeah.
Does the private owner have an obligation to make that available? Blah blah. We will not settle that argument here in this podcast, so I don't want to cover that. But I have said before in the past, but publicly, and I'll say it again. It's a shame. It's like I understand people saying dumping a prototype will reduce the value of it, but it's like that's not going to last forever. Dump the thing, put it out there, get it preserved because I'm curious to see the picture. The picture show was the picture show that the show was pretty far along before it canceled. So, this episode should be preserved, I think, but. Luckily, the game has been available, as we mentioned before, as an English fan, as an English fan patch since 2000. What was the date on here? 2000.
I think it was 2004. You said
2004. Yep, there it is. So, on the biggest site for this, one of the biggest sites for this on the online CD romance. So. I got my version of the game to play here. I'm assuming Joe did too.
Yep.
But there's a few issues. There's a few issues with it. I don't think it's been. It doesn't look like it's been updated like for a while. But there are a few bugs with this. But it's but it's playable as long as you just save the game regularly. You should be all right. I didn't run into any kind of I only ran into one bug, the famous game crashing bug about giving a name to an undividable item and then without leaving the menus totally, going to another side menu, which can crash the ROM. But as long as you just close all the menus correctly, then that doesn't happen. So that's the most common bug that this version of the game has. But beyond that, though, it's fine. So, but anyway. So that's a lot of introduction, a lot of talk about the franchise, and the game and whatnot. And like I said before, I could go on for a long time because this is a very deep franchise, a very deep company, and whatever. So, anyway, having sweet talk Joe into playing this game, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah. So, one. I mean, I love the very simple premise that is laid out in front of you. I am totally very simple, into that.
But it works. Yeah.
Little did I know this was the origins of a series that I'm actually a huge fan of. So there's that. So that was a big revelation down the line. But yeah, I mean, you basically get 2 dungeons and a town. That's what you're looking at. You have your trial dungeon where you see the king. He wants you to recover something. You go to the trial dungeon, which is basically to get you acclimated with the way the process works. You go in as level 1. You are going to find equipment, whether that's good equipment or not. That's all randomized. You will find gold. Gold is obviously good because that's going to help you build your store. And that's essentially what this is. Rinse and repeat. And if you die, you are, I really like the scene where you're thrown out of the dungeon, by the monsters. I thought that was a nice little touch.
It is.
And you lose everything.
Of course you do. Yeah.
So, there's some key items that you should definitely be on the lookout for on floor 10. And this was obviously everything's randomized, so it's not always floor 10, but I found consistently on floor 10 you would find a safe. A safe would allow you to save at least one piece of equipment once you leave the dungeon, because what happens is no matter what you've gotten out of the dungeon, if you are able to make it out alive, that is all turned into gold to build your shop and make it bigger. And essentially the town, because spoiler, you're not only rebuilding a store and making it better for the community apparently and yourself, but also it's building the community around it. And much like most marriages, your wife is controlling all that monies and business. Yeah, and there's multiple ways to get out. Obviously, you can fight your way out alive. One of the most useful ways is if you find an outside scroll, that will automatically teleport you out, and then you'll be able to, as you get further along in the game, you can unlock a vault, and once you unlock the vault, you can take multiple items back into the dungeon with you. Which starts to make gameplay a lot easier. This is really one of those rinse and repeat until you get good or you find the good stuff. And not every run is the same because it's all randomly generated. So there were times I entered the dungeon and got my butt handed to me on the first floor. There were other times where I got, almost, into the 30s before I even felt like I was even remotely close to being in trouble, because somehow in like the first or second level, I found like this amazing shield and sword. I like it. I like the randomly generated dungeons. I think the concept is really good. I like where the concept evolved into. So one other thing before I get too carried away. There's two other mechanics that you have to keep in mind here. One is food is like a timer. Think of like Adventure Island, where you have to keep grabbing food to keep going. You have to keep grabbing food or you are going to die of starvation. Only way around that is finding the belly ring, if you find that item early on in the game, that's the item you're taking with you every single time, so you don't have to worry about looking for food. The other thing is this game is turn-based. Now, what I mean by turn-based is whenever you move, the enemies move. So sometimes they move away from you. Sometimes they move towards you. It's just how it is. So what's really cool is, like I said, this is the origins to a series that I absolutely love. So while playing, it dawned on me, this whole thing that I'm doing and constant repeating, and this feels very familiar, but kind of broken. Because Torneko feels very sluggish when you move him, just so you know. Other than that,
he's supposed to, but he's a fat guy.
Yeah, so. Right. So they made it realistic in that sense. And honestly, I'll just say it right here, controls wise, that is the only complaint I have. Everything else is perfectly fine.
Sure. Yep.
But yeah, so my introduction to this series, which I did not know was a series, was the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games on the Game Boy Advance. So those were my introduction. As most recently on the Switch, I played the remakes of those games, and they were fantastic. So this was very fresh. This whole mechanic was fresh in my mind. The newer games obviously just improve upon everything in this game. So I won't compare anymore because it's not fair. But I wanted people to know that as much as this is the origins of the Mystery Dungeon series, I had to do some Googling to find out that not only is the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series part of this series, but also the Chocobo Dungeons And there was one other one that I totally did not make note of, and it's losing my mind. But anyways, there's many.
The Sharon series, which just had a brand new game come out.
Yeah. So, the series is still going strong, and there's a reason for that. This is a very simple mechanic that works. Yes, it can be infuriating, and boy, is it infuriating at times. But there are other times where you get the luck, and the luck just keeps, lucky number 7s popping every single time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great way to play. I'll tell you that right now.
Sure. So, a few quick notes. You're totally correct. I probably should clarify when I said the franchise ended with 3 games. I meant this particular branch of the franchise ended with 3 games. It did continue, as Joe just said, because Chunsoft realized they had a popular formula here, and so went off to do other things with it. So, I'd like to see a more modern Dragon Quest roguelike game, because there was some the Dragon Quest Monster series is kind of like this in some ways, but not really. So
I get where you're going with that, but that's iffy.
Yeah, I really don't consider it to be. Yeah, exactly. So I will say, however, that the developers at least did us one big kindness here, because compared to many roguelike games, there's no permadeath in this. Can you imagine how much more difficult and frustrating that could be if permadeath was involved?
Yeah. Yep.
So be glad about that at least. But so anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much covers most of it. I mean, ultimately, once you get the Joy Box, the game is done. And at that point, it's all optional whether you're going to continue on traveling.
Sure. Yep.
But you can now, once you get that box, you can go deeper than the 100th floor. So, I mean, there's a lot of floors. The chances of you seeing the 100th floor, which is the final floor, is slim to none. I can guarantee you that. Unless you're cheating. I mean, if you got infinite health, you could probably do it. But any other way, it's not happening. This game purposefully works against you. And I think that's part of the fun here. Do I think it was perfected here? No, I don't. Again, it goes back to the controls with him being sluggish, and I understand they were going for realistic movement, but that for me, that was just a big drain on this particular game. Was moving so slow, but that's because I'm used to the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games where they move 5 times faster and attack quicker and everything else. So, I mean, other than that, I think really all that's really left there is to talk about the graphics and the sound, which.
Well, and also just agree with what you're saying. It's we've said before numerous times in this podcast that a franchise has to start somewhere. So I think and again, this is where this franchise started. And I think for a first game, it's pretty good. I mean, yes, those issues. Yes, if you use to later games, you're going to be later games. You may be frustrated, but so anybody who's a fan of the more modern Mystery Dungeon games and/or Dragon Quest games, definitely check this out. I think this game definitely is still. To me, at least, I think it's still worthwhile playing if you understand the game's understand the game's origins. The fact that it is still a very rough stone. They have not polished it or made it refined yet. But anyway, we're gonna close the thoughts here in a moment. Graphics I touched on briefly a little bit already. It's very Dragon Quest-ish looking. Basic graphics, I think, but pretty good for Super NES. The sprites are very large and detailed, which I appreciate it.
Yep.
The music sounds very Dragon Quest-ish.
Yep.
Nothing really. Overall, I don't think the music was quite as earwormy as Dragon Quest music, but it was still a very good sounding, appropriate soundtrack.
Yeah, I felt the soundtrack was serviceable. And you're right. I mean, the big sprites that you get on screen is really where this game shines. I absolutely love that we can see all the pixel art there. With not only our hero, but also, I guess, Shopkeep. it's a stretch to call him a hero. But and the enemies that you encounter, they all look fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So, I mentioned previously this game sold very well. So we got obviously because it came out only in Japan, like it only got Japanese ratings. But Famitsu, the famous magazine, gave like 8 out of 10, for example.
Okay.
So another magazine like Dengeki Super Famicom gave it also gave like 8 out of 10. So pretty good solid reviews. As far as the game goes, like in Japan. So, would the game have sold well over here in the West had it come out as planned? Hard to say. I mean, like Rogue. I mean, by 94, roguelikes were definitely more popular on computers, but as we talked about before in the past, there wasn't a lot of overlap between PC and console gamers back in those days. So, it's possible a lot of kids may have noticed the Dragon Quest connection and picked it up to give it a shot. The game's challenging, I think, without being overly difficult. So over difficult because, like I said, because as we talked about, a lot of it does depend upon randomness and dice rolls and whatever. So kids certainly can have some fun with this. I don't know. I'm kind of say. Probably would have been a huge success, but success, it probably would have fallen more into those like cult favorite games that people would talk about favorably upon these days. I don't know for sure because Dragon Warrior always sold somewhat well over here in the West, but never really a big success. That's one of the reasons that Enix decided to shut down North American operations circa 1994 and 1995 because of that. So, I don't know. I mean, had it been attached to a more recognizable franchise, could you imagine if Nintendo had made a Zelda roguelike game back in the day? I mean, that probably, I think with that name attached to it, it would have been huge.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know because the plan wasn't titled, they were planning on tying to Dragon Quest 4, but again, it's like Tulum was more popular in Japan than it was here in the West. So
yeah, so
that's all I say. I'm dubious. I'm dubious as to how well the game would have sold over here.
Yeah, so I was thinking okay, well, so it's going to sell at least as good as maybe a Dragon Warrior title or a typical RPG for the SNES. Not a Chrono Trigger, but something your typical RPG that someone's going to take a chance on. And then you'd have to name it like what? Torloon, the Dragon Warrior Adventure, or what I mean? Like something. Yeah,
the plan.
It's got to be.
Yeah, the planned Western release title was Mystery Dungeon: Torloon's Great Adventure.
Yeah, see,
that's the planned title for it.
Yeah, I think you have to connect it to Dragon Warrior somehow if you're gonna get some sales. I think that it's too niche and out there. You know what I mean?
But to be fair, the Japanese title didn't really connect to the Dragon Quest series either. So, I mean,
correct, but culturally, that's totally different.
Yeah, true.
They played RPGs and loved RPGs, and they thought we were all stupid, which is why we got Mystic Quest.
Well, there's also the famous story of there's also the famous story of and this is actually true. I don't remember which Dragon Quest game it was. One of the Dragon Quest games, because Japan used to release games on Tuesdays like they do here in the West.
Yeah.
But one of the Dragon Quest games, I can't remember which one it was now at this point, was so popular that it actually caused the government to step in because it caused such a snarl with society, with people skipping work, skipping school, whatever, standing in line to go buy it. The government stepped in and passed a law saying in Japan that new games had to be released on Saturdays instead from here on out because they wanted to avoid a repeat of that going on. So Dragon Quest was huge in Japan. So
makes sense.
I mean, yes, the title wouldn't need to be connected to Dragon Quest directly in Japan. People would probably see the title know who he was. The artwork also did. The artwork also was out there. The artwork was also very good. I'm not sure if you looked at if you look at the box cover art for this game in Japan, but
it matches exactly what you saw for the box art for the Dragon Quest games. So, that's why I'm saying, like here in the U.S., like look at the Dragon Warrior boxes. You know what I mean? Like they invoke
they're classic Western fantasy.
They invoke that want for fantasy and whatnot, but there's no real connection. You could have called it Torloon Adventure, the Atari sequel. Like, you know what I mean? Like people wouldn't have cared. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think name is everything. I think it kind of had to be connected in some shape, way, or form with Dragon Warrior to be able to get some sales. And even then, I think it would struggle. That's just me.
Yeah, like I'm inclined to say the same thing. So, it's unfortunate it never came out because I probably would have played it that they had to come out. But then again, I already was a fan of roguelike games.
Yeah.
Hadn't played the original Rogue already and the later games as well also. I really had a lot of fun with this game. I was introduced to another Rogue game for the PlayStation called Azure Dreams way back when because
it's a great RPG.
A mutual friend of ours is a big fan of it, and it's like that's a very rogue-like game as well too, and it's a lot of fun. So it's like, so I was already openly inclined to like this game, so. Luckily for me, it delivered. Yes, I had the same control issue that you had. Yes, the game is definitely rough. It's hard to recommend now in 2026 unless you are, like I said, a big fan of roguelike games and or the Dragon Quest series. But it's definitely fun. I mean, and like I said, 10 plus hours. It's not that long of a game to play through either. So, and you can also, you can abuse the RNG system as well if you want to. And there's also something else you can do to give yourself a leg up. This is the appropriate time to mention this. There is a way to be able to cheat early in the game. Well, technically, I guess a cheat. Joe may already know where I'm going with this, but if you die 21 times in the trial dungeon and go see the king, he'll be like, "Okay, you're a total wuss. Here's a metal babble sword. The metal babble shield to help you out. So you can get some great equipment very in the game to help you." So you can do that if you're really struggling with the game. But anyway, so I don't think I've ever played anything else in this play anything else in the Mr. Dragon series. Actually, Joe, I'm looking at the list of games for like right now, and I'm like, I've heard of these.
Yeah,
I've never actually, but I've never actually like played one of these before. I don't think so. I'm curious. I'll probably have to. I'll probably have to check. You'll check one of these out.
Yeah, so when I had looked the other day, I was like, well, all the Pokemon games, of course, I played. So I was like, well, what else is there? And then I saw like Final Fantasy Fables and Chocobo Dungeon 1 and 2, and I was like, I was like, maybe I'll have to check those out. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Pokemon ones are palatable because they're challenging for adults, but they're geared towards kids. So the randomization and the suck that happens isn't as hard. You can say what you want about me. That's fine. You are correct. I'm just going to throw that out there. Sometimes I like an easy game.
The newest entry in the series looks like it was a Shiver the Wanderer, the mystery dungeon at Serpent Coral Island. There's a name for you. From 2024 for Switch and Steam.
Yep.
So that looks like the most recent game in the franchise.
Yeah, there was a sharing game for the Dreamcast I had no idea about. So
yeah,
amazing.
And the game got pretty good reviews too, it looks like here. So, but actually, the best modern roguelike games, I think, in two games and two franchises I've sunk a lot of time into are Hades and The Binding of Isaac, both of which are great franchises.
So Hades 1 and 2 I put a lot of time into.
Yep.
The Binding of Isaac I have not played yet. That is on my list.
It's hard.
It's on my list of stuff, but
it's very hard.
As you know, my list of stuff keeps getting bigger and bigger. Literally just picked up Dragon Quest Monsters, the newest one, because it was it was like a couple bucks on Steam. So I just keep adding to that list. So will I ever get to it? I hope at some point I do, but if not, I think my Steam library can be moved to my next of kin. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it can be. So, but all right. So, any final thoughts? Thoughts about the game before we wrap up here, Joe?
No, I mean, I can sit here and tell you to skip this one because it's the Origins. It's a little rough and everything else, but I'm with Greg. Like, this is a great place to start. You learn what the series was when it started, and then as you branch out, you can go and maybe you've played, Chocobo Dungeon 1 or 2.
Probably have.
And you want to go back and you want to see the origins of that series, because I know those games were pretty popular at the time. So, here's your opportunity to come do that. And I suggest you do. This is definitely a game. I'm going to tell you to play it. Obviously you're going to emulate it because you can't get it in English any other way. But yeah, this is one that
there is a,
I was going to say, there's probably reproduction carts out there. I do believe that. But this is one of those I can easily say, yes, you should play it. I think it's a piece of history that can still be played and admired for what it is, even in this time. This is definitely one that still holds up.
Yep, I agree. So what I was going to say is actually, I couldn't find any reproductions like this game. But what you can do is if you have a modern clone system like Retcon, what you can do is get the Japanese cart and then just load the English ROM onto it, and then just play it that way. Yeah. So physical copies of the game are pretty cheap to obtain. Not surprised, given how it's like a niche game, and the fact that it did not get a Western release. But I looked for North American based copies first to help minimize the shipping costs, because of course we factor shipping costs into our equations for how much a game costs. Not possible to find 8 copies of this game, but they were listed for sale in North America, with 2 copies of the game recently sold. The two copies of the game which sold in North America were cart only, and total prices for those was $9.25. So not a very expensive. Not a very expensive game to get if you want the cart.
I was gonna say you probably go to a hard off in Japan and probably pick this up for a couple yen, if that.
Yeah. Well, CIB copies were only available from Japanese sellers, but even CIB this is not a very expensive game. Those copies sold anywhere from $12 to $40.
Yeah.
But not an expensive game at all to pick up. So if you want to go that route, you can.
Yeah, and if you're willing to break those tabs on your Super Nintendo, you can play it right on your American Super Nintendo.
And like I said, that's the advantage about the Retcon system is like the other clones, you can just load the ROM onto there.
Yeah,
so
very true.
So best of both worlds, no tab breaking involved because they're configured to play multiple cartridges. So. Alrighty, so that's it for this game. Like I said, I'd always been curious to check it out. I'm glad we finally did, and I'm glad Joe had fun with it as well too, because it's one of those games that you never quite know how it's going to go over.
Yes. I mean, when you told me the title of this game, this was one of those where I looked at it and go, oh God, what am I getting myself into? Like, because obviously I can understand dungeon, so. Looking at the Japanese title, I was like, okay, so it's an RPG of some sort. So I don't Google these beforehand. I take them at face value. When we create the list, If Greg says that's the name of the game, that's the name of the game, and I'm not going to find out until I power up either the emulation machine or the Super Nintendo to figure out what it is. So this is a pleasant surprise because I didn't even know the Dragon Quest connection until after, I powered on the emulator and looked at it. I was like, oh, okay.
I think I mentioned I think I mentioned it was a spinoff of Dragon Quest 4 back when we
I was going to say you might have when we did the list, but that was all the way back in December, January. Like we're in July.
Yeah, fair enough.
I can't even remember what I ate on Monday.
So next time on the podcast, it wasn't planned, but we seem to be doing it wasn't planned, but we seem to have settled into a on again, off again guest host rotation where we have a podcast where just the two of us, and the next podcast is the guest host, and then there's two of us again. So that's sticking again next time if everything goes well. We are going to have friends. We're going to have like friend of the podcast and somebody who already was on here recently, Doom, back on the podcast to talk about the last Mega Man X game, Super NES, Mega Man X3. So, and God willing, knock on wood, I will not have any microphone issues this time around with that one. So, stay tuned for that episode next. As always, thanks for being here, everybody. Thank you for joining me as always, Joe.
Of course.
You can find us on Facebook, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNES Podcast yahoo.com. Where can I reach you at, Joe?
I have a very public Facebook, not safe for work. You can find me there. Also, I started twitching again. I guess that's what you call it when you stream, twitching, right?
Streaming is the usual word choice.
Yeah. I mean twitching, whatever. I got WWE 2K26, so I started playing through some of the showcase there. Started, just randomly recording some random matches just to have some content, kind of get some interest back on that channel. That can be found at twitch.tv/JOESUX69. And then, of course, you can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at JOESUX30.
Cool. All right, then. Everybody stay safe, stay cool, especially, especially if you live in a hot area of the world like right now. So, thanks again as always. We'll catch you again next time. Later, all.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.